KREM 2 News begins now.
Hello, thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News Week in Review. I'm Tim Pham. In the next half hour, we'll get you caught up on some of the biggest stories in the Inland Northwest this past week.
A walk in the park can be routine, though in North Idaho, come prepared.
Yes.
Like
Actually,
Terry Call does.
My walking stick is for a moose, because if they get too close, I can go moose. No.
A moose may be expected in Falls Park. What Terry actually ran across Tuesday
This is really a shock to see.
caught everyone by surprise. Regular walkers turned sightseers, trying to catch a shot of this toppled 100-ton giant, not in Avista's plans for the 100-year-old North Dam's rehab.
We don't know exactly what happened or what caused the crane what was the root cause of the accident. We'll be going through an assessment investigation to figure that out.
But they do have an emergency plan, which led to the brief warning the dam could fail
That's a lot of water behind the dam, so
and flood.
we'll see.
Operations and Dam Safety performed our joint inspection approximately 1 hour afterwards. So it was around 10:15 or 10:20 when we were able to make that determination and stand that down.
Even with no flood danger in this damage, it will upend Terry's weekly wildlife walks.
I've been supplementing the chipmunks with seed, but when I got to the park today, the gentleman said it's completely closed.
With no idea how long this beast could lie.
Well, that flash flood watch went out because the National Weather Service says they were following the emergency procedures already in place for the Post Falls Dam. It was canceled in less than an hour.
And it's a rare event that when we do this.
This being the flash flood watch sent out by the National Weather Service after a crane collapsed at the Post Falls Dam Tuesday morning. NWS hydrologist Robin Fox says it started with a phone call from the dam's operator saying they were activating their emergency action plan for potential failure.
The National Weather Service is one of those stakeholders that gets notified because we issue the alerts for watches and warnings of any type of failure.
Fox says that prompted the Weather Service to issue the flash flood watch as part of their procedure. That went out right before 10 a.m. It was canceled less than an hour later after getting word the dam was safe and the emergency action plan scaled down. Ryan Bean manages plant operations and maintenance at the Post Falls Dam.
Part of our temporary construction emergency action plan includes a list of notifications. Those include our internal and external agencies.
One thing to note, NWS issued a watch, not a warning, which is on the lower end of their emergency spectrum. According to the Weather Service, a watch means conditions are favorable for an event to happen, such as a flash flood, but doesn't mean it will. It's issued to allow people who can be impacted to get ready. A warning means the event's imminent or already happening, and people need to take action.
Given this time of the year, there's not much water in the rivers right now, but still any sudden release of water could be hazardous because we're not used to that at this time, any change in the flow right now.
Now, while both Avista and the National Weather Service says they followed their emergency protocol, some emergency responders, including the fire chief for Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, say while they understand why the flash flood watch was put out, they questioned if it was needed and wished they'd been coordinated with. In studio, Cody Proctor, KREM 2 News.
Yeah, well, I am told by local organizations that have been in partnership with TRAC that today is a very heavy and emotional day. Now, the city of Spokane released a statement saying that they are transitioning to providing 200 beds across scattered sites.
It's a very heavy feeling for a service provider.
The city said through this transition, the plan is to provide more intimate and intense behavioral health services to increase the access for people to obtain permanent housing and employment.
We know that the mayor's scattered site model is a new model for our region, and we're excited to see how that can play a more important part in how we serve our unhoused neighbors.
Amid the TRAC closure, the city approved an $800,000 allocation to fund 133 shelter beds for inclement weather.
Our street level vans, which are going to continue to be on the street doing outreach, they were an essential service this last year during the cold snaps when there were people, homeless people, that were on the streets.
Revive is one Spokane organization providing those weather beds, but they say with the closing of TRAC, they are behind schedule.
The system can never move as fast as the need is. And so while we're trying to develop and implement this whole new process, we also have people who are freezing on the streets. So
Revive's CEO said it has been a lot to coordinate closing the TRAC shelter and navigating people to the right places while also opening the additional weather shelter beds.
we've been trying to collaborate with every community partner we know to find new bed opportunities. It's sad because the system beds are pretty full.
She says they're waiting for the TRAC shelter to officially close to move equipment to their own facility. Pavey said although they anticipated weather beds to be open by November 1st, their hope is to now be open by November 3rd.
I'm KREM 2 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legoo. Snow impacts us every single winter, and after a couple of years of somewhat relaxed winter conditions, this year looks like it's going to deliver. So get the skis ready and get those winter tires ready because we've got a lot of it on the way. Watch my long-range winter forecast streaming exclusively on KREM 2 Plus.
This debate comes less than a week out from Election Day, and it marked the 6th time that they've debated each other. Now, they outlined how they would work with local tribes, push to improve the federal response to wildfires, and broker a new farm bill. Overall, this was a civil debate, but their differences were clear on a few key issues.
That intimate decisions about who we marry, when we marry, whether to start a family, and with whom we start a family have to be left up to us as individuals. That's part of the freedom that we are guaranteed by our Constitution.
Abortion isn't mentioned in the Constitution, and as such, it's an issue for the states. So I don't plan on when I go to Congress of being particularly active in the abortion discussions because that's better dealt with at the local and state level.
I think that it is disingenuous for my opponent to say that he just wouldn't vote if the issue came up before the Congress. He's never trained as a lawyer. He apparently hasn't read the part of the Constitution that says in the 9th Amendment and 10th Amendment that there are privacy rights, there are rights reserved to individuals that are not mentioned in the Constitution, and also that rights that are not, powers that are not given to the federal government or to the state government are reserved to the people themselves.
We need more support for young families, things like the child tax credit and healthcare support so that people can make the decision that is right for them. But again, on this issue, and we get asked about it a lot, I don't think abortion is a federal issue. It's a state and local issue, and I think that's where these decisions will rest.
Quickly, in just 15 seconds, please tell us if a national abortion ban bill came to Congress, how would you vote on it, Ms. Conroy?
I would vote against a national abortion ban.
And Mr. Baumgartner?
Yeah, I would also vote against a national abortion ban.
While both candidates agreed they would have certified the 2020 election results, they had very different views on election integrity and what the best course of action would be to make sure people across the state trust the voting process.
It's important that we restore that trust. What I would like to see be done, if it could be done, was to return to same-day voting. I think that brings a tremendous amount of civic pride to folks, and people would have more trust than the current process. One thing that we should all do right now is show ID to get to vote. If you have to show ID to get into Costco or show ID to get an airplane, well, what's the most important thing you do in society is show ID to vote.
The citizens of Washington state have decided that they want to be able to vote by mail, that everybody gets to vote by mail. And so for my opponent to suggest that somehow the system's so broken that we have to return to the expense and inconvenience of bringing people together to vote, and that in order to do so, they're going to have to get an identification of a particular type. This is voter suppression.
This was only a small portion of things that were discussed, and the candidates answered over a dozen questions. However, this was the final debate before Election Day on November 5th, but both candidates say they will be campaigning until the very end. Christian Garza, KREM 2 News.
I'm outside the Kootenai County Elections Office where these Idaho voters are taking advantage of early voting right now. And one of the things that they'll have to decide is whether or not to vote yes or no on Idaho's Proposition 1.
Supporters of Idaho's Proposition 1 say the ranked choice vote system will broaden voter access to participate in elections.
A major benefit of Proposition 1 and the top 4 open primary is that voters would be able to vote for the person and not always the party. So they could choose to support the Republican they really like for the governor's race. They could choose to support an independent in their local legislature.
But those who oppose the initiative believe the current election system should remain in place because it is clear and transparent.
Right now, we have a system that is very fair because we have guaranteed ballot access for 4 political parties and independent voters. This completely tosses that notion out.
Idahoans for Open Primaries is a political action committee supporting the measure. The Idaho Secretary of State's website shows it's received about $4.5 million of out-of-state contributions and a little more than $1 million of in-state contributions.
So based on those numbers, do you think it's fair to call this measure an Idahoan initiative?
From day one, Proposition 1 has been an Idaho homegrown campaign, and we've raised donations from over 5,000 individual Idaho donors representing all 44 counties in the state.
Still, the opposing side says there is too much at stake.
If this were to come into place, we would completely and radically change our entire election system, both primary and general. We would essentially erase the ability for counties to run their own elections, and we would be subject to the whims of outside, very wealthy political organizations who want to change the way we do elections here in Idaho.
In Coeur d'Alene, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on KREM 2 Plus for your KREM 2 News Weekend Review. It's been a busy week here in the Inland Northwest. Let's get you caught up on some of the news you might have missed.
My mom came from Japan.
Sal Mangia is no stranger to public speaking. Over a 40-year career as a lawyer, he's argued before the U.S. and Washington Supreme Courts, and now he's hoping for a seat on the bench.
8 of the 9 current state Supreme Court justices have endorsed me, saying, yes, we know both my opponent and we know Sal, and Sal should be the guy.
His opponent, Federal Way Municipal Court Judge Dave Larson, someone who has been critical of recent state Supreme Court rulings.
I think right now we're in this position where it's about power and control instead of about responsibility and duty.
The men both hope to replace current Justice Susan Owens. She's reached the mandatory retirement age of 75 and is stepping down. Since 2020, the court has been responsible for major rulings, determining the state's capital gains tax is not an income tax and therefore legal, and the court threw out the state's drug possession law. Mangia says those were the right decisions.
We had a law on our books which allowed the government to convict you of a Class C felony without proving that you intended to possess drugs.
While it's a nonpartisan position, Mangia is proud to have the support of Governor Inslee and the Democratic Party. Does that mean he'd be an ally to Democrats if elected?
I'm surprised. You actually asked that question with a straight face. I mean, that was pretty good. And you know the answer is no, right? I mean, my whole position as a lawyer has always been to represent my clients. As a judge, I will remain neutral. I have to do that. That's the position.
When something gets in the judiciary, there should be a sigh of relief that it's in a place that's not political and that's going to make decisions that'll help people move on and solve problems.
Judge Larson, who has been on the bench in Federal Way since 2008, disagrees with how the courts ruled on COVID vaccine mandates, the capital gains tax, and the drug possession law.
To throw out a statute that had been upheld twice before, in 1981 and 2004, because they didn't agree with the policy behind it. Now, personally, I didn't agree with the policy behind it, but as a judge, your personal opinions don't matter.
The state's Republican Party recommends Larson. He, too, says he would serve all Washingtonians.
8 of the 9 sitting justices have endorsed your opponent. What does that say? Are you?
Well, I think this really gets down to the fundamental issue in this race, which is, are the people going to select who the justices want or who the people need?
Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Jamie Rara Butler spent 12 years in Congress as the representative for the 3rd District. She also worked as an advisor to the Children's Hospital Association and a senior legislative aide in the U.S. House. Butler says she wants to increase firefighter pay and expand programs that clear fuels in forests to prevent wildfires and harvest timber to fund schools.
The best thing we can do to keep our forests healthy is to sustainably manage them. So that's the thing that I love about this. The environment and the economy are not mutually exclusive.
Dave Up the Grove chaired the King County Council, served as a state representative and chair of the House Environment Committee, and worked in recreation and conservation. Up the Grove says he wants to protect more legacy forests and launch a clean energy trust to increase economic development, especially in rural areas.
Our world is changing. We're experiencing the impacts of climate change all around us. We're seeing a rapid loss in biodiversity, and we need to improve the management of our public lands to meet these realities of today.
Herrera Butler, a Republican, describes herself as a bipartisan problem solver. She points to endorsements from local newspapers like the Seattle Times and a range of groups she says demonstrate abilities to work across the aisle.
There are really, really smart people who work at the DNR. Depending on where the political winds blow, they get hobbled. Their ability to do the forest health work gets pulled back because of political issues. And so I've committed to leaning into this, to empowering them to do their jobs.
Up the Grove, a Democrat, says his endorsements include the Sierra Club and Washington Conservation Action, along with other leaders and grassroots groups. He says he'll work to protect public lands for all.
Our public lands don't belong to industry. They don't belong to big business. They belong to we the people. They're public lands. They're our lands. And I'm running to manage our state lands in the public interest for all the people of the state of Washington.
The winner will replace outgoing Commissioner Hillary Franz, who entered the race for the 6th Congressional District but did not move on from the primary.
The Coeur d'Alene tribe's history runs deep.
1924 was not long ago.
And that history continues to live on today.
We have a couple tribal elders who are, in their mid-90s. They were little girls and, little boys at that time.
But as far as voting history goes,
in Idaho, it's been a lot less time than that. It's been the 1950s.
So now the tribe's elders are leading the way in civic engagement.
Bring your family, bring your friends, and vote.
I was approached by many elders to get some native vote election momentum going.
Know who's going to help your community and your tribe.
And you never say no to elders.
I'm a tribal member and I vote in the tribal elections.
The neat thing is to try to figure out how we can get these messages out on social media in ways that reach young people.
One of those young voters is Ayanna James.
So I've been involved in the native vote meetings and trying to get the word out, getting people registered to vote, just getting information out on the importance of voting.
Even as a younger tribal member, the historical significance of tribal voting isn't lost upon her.
It's really important for us to realize that resiliency that our tribal people have had and what it took for us to get to this point, to have this, not this privilege, but this right to vote in a country that we've been a part of for the time immemorial.
And while voting in state and federal elections hasn't had as long a history in the tribe,
the Coeur d'Alene people have been here for thousands of years and have known not only how to manage the resources around them, but also how to manage and organize amongst themselves.
So now, as November 5th approaches, the people of the Coeur d'Alene tribe continue to rally to make their voices heard.
These elders knew what a difference it made when they were finally able to go there and start casting their vote. Their excitement for this election gets me more excited.
Excitement for the vote, but also excitement for the generations of tribal members to come.
I hope that more Indigenous people can be in these positions of decision making and be sitting at these tables, not even just sitting at these tables, but able to have a positive and effective contribution to these conversations.
Aidan Brown, KREM 2 News.
Is that for us? You're very kind.
How did 25 years go by so quickly?
Here's another one.
I mean, it's just in a blur.
Thank you.
And I think when we started Tom's Turkey Drive,
Oh, look at that.
you know, I think we just were really year to year. I don't think we really thought that there would be this, I don't know, long-term need or something else would come along or we didn't need to be doing it anymore. And it just developed an energy of its own. And not just from the recipients, but from the whole community, the whole inland Northwest.
Fabulous volunteers right here. This is from Rogers High School. I've got Emily from Lewis and Clark High School. All kids from Ferris High School, the Saxons.
I mean, it just was this magical time where people really believed in what we were doing. You know, a beautiful family meal to give thanks to whomever.
I think we're gonna donate about $20.
$20?
We are donating $2,000.
Oh my God! Holy moly, thank you!
And it just became this incredible thing to where now we just say, you know, this can't stop. This is just a beautiful, this is like Bloomsday. This is, you know, this is just a wonderful tradition.
Basic math is simply this. We've got to give away a turkey and a bag of food every 5 seconds for 12 hours.
We love how you guys do this every year.
There's a lot of people in this town that need help.
Everyone gets it. Everyone believes in Thanksgiving and families being together. Everyone believes that. And that's why I think that's the beauty and magic of Tom's Turkey Drive.
Thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News Weekend Review. For the most current news throughout the weekend, you can watch our latest newscast and weather forecast right here on KREM 2 Plus. Just look for the video in the bottom navigation menu. I'm Tim Pham. Thanks for watching.
I'm KREM 2 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legoo. Snow impacts all of us every single winter, and this year it's looking like we're going to see a lot of it and some cold temperatures we haven't seen in a while. Join us on Monday at KREM 2 News at 6 as I dive into my long-range winter forecast.